Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. Again, like we said, on such a beautiful day. At least some of you are able to do this outside, so that's great. Flexibility of the internet. So I'm Kristen Lyman. I am the owner of the Lionseed Bookstore and Learning Commons in Battle Lake, Minnesota. I'll give you a little bit of background on me, the Lionseed, and then how we came to create the Mira Jane's Battle Lake Book Club before we kind of get into introductions. So first of all, I grew up in Battle Lake and lived about 4 blocks from what is now the Lionseed. I was the little girl with a big imagination who loved to read. My favorite place to be was outside in nature, playing make-believe or reading inside a newly constructed blanket fort. Um, I also, I also had a fair amount of trying to play school with my younger sister, but she just did not want to be the student. So um, I longed to connect with people of any age, and I would invite them over to play. Like Elvira, who was the 80-year-old woman who lived down the block from me. She would walk uptown to pick up her mail every day, and I would always invite her over to play. She never said yes. I'm okay with that now. But or there were times when I was a stinker, my dad was babysitting, and I was outside in the evening. The track team would run by because I lived a block from the school, and I made friends with this nice girl, and I may or may not have run away with the track team at one point in so these kind of things kind of give you the little background. I've truly been planning and preparing for this community cultural event that I call the Lionseed since I was a little girl. And the Mira Jane's Battle Lake Book Club really brings together a lot of those loves of books, community, nature, Battle Lake, imagination, creativity. So a little bit about the book club itself and why we're all here this afternoon. I met Jess Lourey, author Jess Lourey, shortly after opening the Lionseed in 2022. She was on tour promoting her book, Quarry Girls, which actually went on to win a Minnesota Book Award. And not only is Jess a great writer, but she's a great person also. And she was gracious enough to mentor me in my early days as a bookseller. So I appreciated that. Jess grew up in Paynesville, Minnesota, another small town for those of you who are not from Minnesota in the area, but she spent some time living in my hometown of Battle Lake. While she was there, she wrote her very first book, first book published, maybe I should say, Mayday, which became the first book in a Murder by Month series that was set in a fictitious version of Battle Lake, Minnesota. Since then, Jess's fan base has grown exponentially with the release of more than 30 books and many awards. In fact, Jess actually just returned from the Edgar Awards in New York, celebrating the nomination of her book, The Taken Ones, for the prestigious Mystery Writing Award. And this year, Jess's new publisher, Thomas & Mercer, is re-releasing her beloved rom-com mystery series with new covers and edits. Yay. So because of all that, we started talking a while ago, and hey, could we, Jess said, hey, could we do, do you want to do an author, like a talk, a book signing, something like that around Winanga Days? And I said, yeah, sure. And then Jen Ryder and I, who I will introduce shortly as well, we started brainstorming, and what resulted was now the Mira Jane's Book Club, which is a year of events and lots of fun things, which we will get into. So we thought this would be a great opportunity to reintroduce and introduce Mira James and this beloved rom-com mystery series. So to help promote Jess's work, but also to bring these books to life in a kind of a different and unique way through a year of fun, bringing Mira Jane's and Battle Lake to you, the fans, wherever you are. So this is a virtual club. We will have opportunities where we can get together in person, but everything will be offered online, so we can have online community as well. So let me see. Let somebody else in here. Okay. All right. So real quick, the book club, it offers several ways to engage with Lourey's Murder in Red Month mysteries, as well as the community of Battle Lake. So you may have seen, and I'm going to quick screen share here. Perhaps. Okay. So we've got, we have different levels as far as membership levels go. You can participate in the chat group, which I think most of you have already discovered. That's basically the Facebook group page where we'll be posting regularly every week and talking about the books, talking about really whatever you want. But we'll try and keep it interesting and fun. And that is free and easy to join. You just head out to our Facebook page. We have our meetup groups, which with a small fee, and basically it's free if you if with a book purchase through Lionseed as well. And that adds on where we do the monthly meetings like today. Our next monthly meeting is going to be yoga in front of Battle Lake. So you can participate online or in person. We also will have a murder mystery dinner or murder mystery event and some other fun things. Book box subscription. If you've ever seen Jess's really cool promo boxes, basically it's something similar where you will get the book of the month and you will get a bunch of small gifts that mostly are either made in and of the people of Battle Lake or have something to do with it. And each one of those little gifts will have a page number that corresponds with the book for that month. So when you get to that page, you open the little thing, and it will have some relevance to kind of a clue in the book as you read along. So kind of another fun way to interact. And then we have the special event series. So those are some additional events that you can engage in, and one of those being Jess is going to do a writing workshop later on, well, early next year, I would say, and that's a part of the special event series. So I'm going to stop sharing. Yes, so I think I'm going to we're going to keep moving on. We can ask if anybody has any questions, or maybe we'll just save those to the end. What I'd like to do right now is if we could do kind of a 6 degrees of separation activity. I think there's enough people that I might split us into 2 groups, and for maybe 4 or 5 minutes, we'll put you into groups, and I'd love for you guys to talk. You can use the whiteboard if you want to actually draw out connections and things, but basically if you would talk amongst yourselves, figure out what the shortest degree of separation is between you and Jess Lourey or you and Battle Lake. Okay? And we'll just use that as kind of our way to introduce ourselves to each other. Any questions before I send you into a group?
Nope.
Okay.
Yep.
Right. There we go. Okay, so this is okay. And well, maybe this is not going to work. So this is my technical error here.
Hello.
Hello, my apologies. This is me spazzing out here with technology. So, you know what? Our group is not that big. So let's just, how about, I'll put up a whiteboard and you guys can all draw on it, and maybe start with, you can just do your own circle and note you know, how you're connected to Battle Lake. And let me change that. My daughter is now here. Okay, cool. Okay. So let's just go around the room, and let's start with Trudy, if you don't mind, if you want to introduce yourself and tell us how you are connected to Jess or Battle Lake, or we can help figure that out.
Recording in progress.
I think only through reading the books. I don't know. I'm not muted, am I?
Nope.
Nope, you're good.
Oh, okay. Okay, I read the Mayday series when my kids were just old enough to play by themselves, so I could finally reintroduce reading back into my life. I was an English major, so I think just through reading the book, and I loved how clever and witty and fun it was, and the fact that it was set in Minnesota. And when I saw the Facebook meeting today, I was busy weeding my garden. I thought I'll take a break and hop in.
Nice.
Yay. Thank you, Trudy.
Mhm.
Sandy, how about you?
Hi. How do I know Jess Lourey? Well, we worked together on the West Bank, which features in May Day, if memory serves. And we went our separate ways, and I moved back to Minnesota almost 8 years ago. And some of us who used to work at Global Village got back together, and actually we had some writing dates. A bunch of us are writers, so I guess my connection is very close.
It is very close. And if you recognize Sandy Waters' name, she's an inspiration for the character whose house Mira James lives in his house sitting throughout the series. Yeah.
Yes, I didn't know that.
Right. Let's see. How about Jane?
Well, I have a Battle Lake address and have been associated with and in the area as one of the lake summer people for about 60 years. And my husband and I, a couple years ago, moved here permanently, built our retirement home. I participate in the Lionseed book club. So we read Quarry Girls, which was my actually second introduction a long time ago, Jess. I don't know when Junebug was released, but it was a long time ago. My neighbor at the lake is an avid reader, and she knew I was too, and she introduced me to the book. So I read that one, and then the only other Myra James book I've read, unfortunately, is April Fool's, because I just happened to see the book and it was the end of March, and I thought, well, I want to read these because I knew they were set in Battle Lake. So I picked up the book 12 of 12, but I think they stand alone well. So I'm looking forward to starting at the beginning now with Mayday and reading the works.
Excellent. Thank you. Jade, how about you?
Well, hi. Yeah, my name's Jade, and I'm actually new to Battle Lake. So my husband's been connected to Battle Lake his whole life, coming up here during the summer, and then being part of his family, fell in love with Battle Lake. And I actually technically have an Underwood address, so I'm a little bit removed. I know, but my son goes to Battle Lake School, and I'm really connected with the community in Battle Lake. So I actually have not even started or read any of these books. So I took a history walking tour last Monaga Days in Battle Lake, and I just love hearing the history and like the connections of Battle Lake and the businesses. So I'm just excited to read about the connections between the book and Battle Lake.
Okay. Thanks, Jade. Sarah, how about you? Or let's do Anne's got her mic on. We could do Anne.
Hi, I'm Ann, and I used to work up in Fergus Falls, and I know Jess I worked with her husband, and of course, since I worked up there, I know the area, and I've read the first two books in this series so far, and I also read the Quarry Girls, and I've enjoyed enjoyed the books, and I like mystery books and local authors, and kind of know Jess. I don't know her very well, but had met her a couple times. So.
Yay. Well, thank you, Anne. Okay, Sarah, how about you?
I'm Sarah. I'm like Jade. I'm kind of new to this series, but I grew up in Otter Tail County. I have a business in Battle Lake. So I've met Kristen through some business little ideas and adventures. And I'm excited to read these books in this series. So, yeah. So
Awesome.
and I have a son that goes to Battle Lake High School, so it's kind of fun to tie the book to our small town, and it's something fun to have in our community and kind of tie our community to something fun like this. So I'm excited.
Thanks, Sarah. Karen.
Hi, I'm Karen. I grew up in Battle Lake. Kristen actually was my setter on the volleyball team. So I've known Kristen since we were very, very young, because it's a small town. So
I
yeah.
have pictures of us in campfire together. Oh
yeah.
And tap dance.
Oh my gosh, with Tessa Kennedy and those black and orange outfits, right?
Those photos may or may not make their appearance into the book club chat, because I'll just real quick, our dance classes, we got to dance at the Battle Lake Senior Citizens Center, or like basically yeah. So those pictures might make their appearance. So sorry.
Do you remember too that we had rehearsal in the basement at what is now the Battle Lake Inn, which is referenced in the books?
Wow. Yeah.
Did you remember that?
No. Sorry to sidetrack here. Okay.
So yeah, my mom still lives in Battle Lake. She and I have both been Mira James fans since the very beginning, and yeah, just happy to be here doing my laundry.
Thanks, Karen. Okay, Robin just hopped on. Robin, if you want to introduce yourself, how you're connected to Jess or Battle Lake.
And onion chips, and then one Lay's.
Did you ask Deb?
Yeah.
Okay.
And somebody's kiddos are helping out. And then Angela.
That was me, sorry.
Oh, that's right. And then Angela, I think you said in a chat, did you want to introduce yourself? Yeah, okay. It's phone, okay, stick in a chat. Okay. All right. Robin, are you on?
Yes.
Would you like to introduce yourself and just let us know real quick if you have what your connection is to Battle Lake or Jess Lourey?
I started reading Jess Lourey the first time around, so I read all of the books before. I'm just super happy that they're coming out again and more people get to enjoy them.
Hooray. All right. Well, thank you everybody for introducing yourselves. I am going to, we're running a little bit over time on my part, but I'm going to introduce Jess, which all of you know in some capacity, it sounds like. And Jess, you just take it away, and you can have the floor to talk about whatever you want.
Whatever.
Well,
First of all, I'm so excited to be here. I'm going to do a very brief talk about how the books came to be. Mayday was my first published novel, so I'm gonna do a little bit of a talk about that. But mostly I just love to. It's so nice to meet all of you. So thank you for introducing yourself, and I just love questions too, if you have any. I'd love to answer those. So I'm going to get started. Like Kristen, I was a big reader as a child, and everybody in my family was a big reader. So I saw books. My dad had built a library in our very small farmhouse, and we had it stacked with garage sale books. And so I saw people loving to read, and I wanted people to love me. So I figured I'd start writing books. And I held on to that dream through high school. I don't believe I have any natural talent other than what everybody has for writing. Writing is just very much hard work and some discipline. And so I wrote some short stories in high school. I wrote some really terrible poetry, like really bad poetry. And then I went off to college in St. Cloud, which is where the Quarry Girls is set. And I got an undergrad degree, and I had decided pretty early on that I'm a practical person. I had decided I wasn't going to make money with writing right away, so I'd be a teacher like my parents, so I could write during the summers until my career took off. The hubris. But so I started my undergrad degree in education. I quickly realized that I am not good with other people's children. Like little kids are a lot of work. Whoever does daycare and elementary ed has my eternal respect. And so I decided I would be a college English teacher rather than high school or elementary. And so I got my master's degree, and I had done no creative writing in those 4 years of my undergrad degree. And at the end of my master's degree, I talked my advisor into letting me write a novel. I finally would have this unbroken time. Most people write research projects. I figured I would write a novel. And he said yes. So I spent a year, almost 2 years working on that novel. When it was done, it was 1996. I thought it was the best thing that had ever been written. I thought the world was going to love to see that book. And I was so green. I was so green about how publishing worked that I literally picked up books, looked up the address of the publisher, and I just wrote letters to the publishers. And I said, hey, I've got this book. You're really going to want to see it. And they really did. They really did not want to see it. The few of them that were kind enough to write back, wrote back with rejections, and they just said, this isn't how anything works. Please get an editor and an agent and circle back. And so I was crushed. I was young. I was early 20s. I thought it would be easy. I was crushed. And so that was 1996. And I figured I gave it a shot. I wrote a book. I submitted it to publishers. Nobody wanted it. The writing life wasn't for me. So I got a teaching job in Alexandria at Alec Tech College. And as an aside, so 1996 was when I wrote that master's thesis. 2006 was when Mayday came out. The first iteration of Mayday came out. And in those 10 years, I had learned so much about writing that I understood how bad my first novel was. I was too close to it when I wrote it, but after 10 years, I realized how bad it was. And I didn't want people to know how bad I used to be. So I talked 2 friends into going to the St. Cloud State Library. Your college hangs on to your thesis. It's in a dusty corner of the library forever. I talked the ethics professor and the sociology professor from Alec Tech to go into going to the St. Cloud State Library and stealing my thesis. And so I stole it. I got it outside of the library. I was overcome by guilt the next day and I returned it. But anyhow, my point is it was really bad. People ask me during this story, they say it couldn't have been that bad. And I'm like, it really was that bad. And so I probably would not have gone back to writing if not for tragedy. And Anne knows the story. If you've seen my TEDx talk, you know this story. But I was teaching at Alec Tech. I was pregnant with my son. My daughter was 3 years old, and my husband took his own life. And it was 9/11. As you can imagine, it was a stressful day for the world, but it was the shock of his suicide, which I didn't know he was dealing with depression. I didn't know all of this was in our future. The shock was so bad that they thought I was miscarrying my son, and I ended up at the Fergus Falls ER. My son is fine, by the way. He's 22. He's wonderful. He's a big, tall sweetie. But at the time, they didn't know if he was going to make it because the stress knocked me sideways. And the ER doctor, whose name I will never know, came into my room, and it's an emergency room. It's very busy, it's very loud. And he sits by my bedside and he said, I can't do much for you physically. You need bed rest. He said, this is a mental issue. And the 2 things I need you to do, he said, before I tell you, will you promise me that you'll do them? And I said, yeah, I would have said yes to anything. I said, yes, of course. And he said, number 1, I need you to get a therapist. And he was right, and I did. And he said, number 2, I need you to write. I need you to write. I need you, you're creating this little human, and the poison goes out or it goes in. And so you need to write. And he meant journaling, of course. And so I left the hospital, got my therapist, and I had promised this man, he had no idea that I always wanted to be a writer. He had no idea about my failed thesis. He just knew something that the science at the time did not know, which is that if you write, it heals you. It doesn't matter what you write about, it really doesn't. If you spend 15 minutes a day, 5 days a week, journaling, just writing down your thoughts, writing down what annoyed you that day, what you're afraid of. It's profoundly healing. There's so much science on this now, but he didn't know it at the time. I didn't know at the time. I tried journaling. I was too, the last thing I wanted was to spend more time with my own thoughts, right? And when you're in deep grief, you don't want to go deeper. So I tried journaling, didn't work, but I had given my word that I would write. I would give my word to this man who had been very caring and thoughtful. So I decided, fine, I'll write a mystery. That's got to be easy, right? I'll just write a mystery. I can't journal. I certainly could not write literary fiction. I'll write a mystery. So I went to the Alexandria bookstore. I think it was Book World in the mall back then. So I go to the Alexandria bookstore and I come up. This is the second person whose name I don't know and who put me on this path of my dream job. So I come up to the counter, this woman's working. I said, I sure loved Nancy Drew and Trixie Belden and the Hardy Boys. Are there any new mystery writers since then? And she said, yeah, couple. And she handed me 3 authors who at the time I had never heard of, a William Kent Kruger, Sue Grafton, and Janet Ivanovich. And I took those 3 books home, and my idea was that I was going to study them. Like a chef studies a cake to figure out what ingredients went in there, what order they went in. I was going to study these 3 books to figure out how to write a mystery. But what I found as I read them was that there were unbroken stretches of time, like 3, 4, 5 minutes, where I didn't think about anything but the story. And if you've lost somebody unexpectedly, it is such a gift to be distracted. And so I meant to study them, but instead I was transported by them. I fell in love with mysteries on a level I did not expect. And so I wrote my first mystery, and it's called Mayday. And if you know my story, it was a cry for help. It was my Mayday. It gave me what I needed. It gave me friends, it gave me justice, it gave me answers, it gave me humor. None of it's really in the pages, but it's all in the pages. So I wrote Mayday. And if you've read it, it's kind of very clumsily a third Sue Grafton, a third William Kent Kruger, and a third Janet Ivanovich. When I finished writing it, I thought, I might have something here. It had been at that point about 8 years since I wrote that awful thesis. And I thought I might have something here. It's not the worst thing ever. And so I started to look for agents, because at that point I knew that what you do is you write a query letter. It's like a cover letter, and you ask an agent to represent your book, and then they bring it to a publisher. And so I'm living in, my address was Battle Lake, but I lived out on Hancock Lake, right behind Eagle Lake. It's beautiful back there, but my address was literally Golden Pond Road in Battle Lake. I still visit it every time I go to town, but I'm living in rural Battle Lake with dial-up internet and a dot matrix printer. And I'm writing these query letters, these cover letters to agents, and I would send out 50 at a time. And I'd start getting back 10 rejections, 20 rejections, 30 rejections. I'd write another 50. And then finally, 423 rejections later, I got my agent, and she sold Mayday, and she sold the series. So it was Mayday, Junebug, the whole works. And that's how that series came to be. And it really is, besides being about my survival at that time and my mental health, it really is about my love-hate relationship with small towns. And I do love them. Battle Lake held me up. The people in Battle Lake, as well as the people in Alexandria, went out of their way to be kind. And it was that sense of community. Really, I'm indebted forever to it. And also the flip side is everybody knows your business all the time. Right? It's a love-hate, and I continue to have it. I continue to have that relationship. And so that's how Mayday came to be. Does anybody have any questions about it or thoughts about it? I would prefer this to be a discussion rather than a lecture.
How in the writing process did you discover that Mira and Mrs. Burns were going to be besties?
Yeah, so I was inspired by Janet Ivanovich's Stephanie Plum series, and she's got, I'm not sure how it's pronounced, Grandma Mazur. It's this wonderful older character who just says what's on her mind, and she's consistently funny. And I really wanted just some female wisdom, just an older female person in the story. And so they just started growing closer. So it wasn't intentional, just like the police chief Gary Won't becoming sexier. I didn't plan for that. That was not, I did not mean to do that. And you know what? Questions about the book club are good too, if you have any of those, or about Battle Lake. Yes, because Kristen can handle the Battle Lake questions even better. Thank you, Angela.
Yeah, I love the healing piece of the writing. I get
Yeah.
the small town piece.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hey, Jess, I've got a question.
Yeah.
I was doing some reading online and it said, like, with the reintroduction of this series, there was some editing or something different. What did you change from the original and the new release?
Yeah, it depends on the book because there's 12 in the series. Thank you for the question too, by the way. I think that a lot of people have it. So with the first 3 books, Mayday, Junebug, and Knee High by the 4th of July, there was pretty deep editing. The crime stays the same. The general shape of the relationships stays the same, but the plot is tighter. I think it's more of a page turner. And then with the rest of them, as well as those first 3, there's been a lot of line editing. So a lot of, when I first published those books with a small press in Minnesota, Midnight Ink, and I'm eternally grateful for them for picking me out of the pile and giving me my start. But when I was with them, I did not get a lot of editing. And I thought it was because the books I'd already hired a freelance editor for all of those books. So I thought they were in pretty good shape. But it turns out I just wasn't getting good editing at Midnight Ink. And so there are a lot of inconsistencies between books. And so, for example, the Tiger Pop, the cat is a female in one book, a male in the other book, a female in another book throughout the series. So that's getting fixed. I had 4 characters named Marvin. I don't know what that was. It just, I'm so bad at naming characters. I do have a character in November Hunt named Sharpie Trevino because I had a Sharpie marker next to my computer when I was typing. This is how bad I am at names. And then also my sensibilities when I wrote those books, some of the humor punched down a little bit. I made some jokes at just about body types, just things that I would never do in this day and age with the knowledge that I have now. But back then, I mean, it wasn't right back then either, but a lot of that stuff is getting completely eradicated. So it's kinder, it's tighter, and it's funnier, I think. Yeah,
Thank
thank you
you.
for the question. Yeah. Angela has a question about basements. She said, I love how you write about basements in many of your books. Is there a real life story you have about being creeped out by basements? I swear I forgot how creeped out I was by them. Okay, that is such a good question because I do have a thing about basements. I super am creeped out by them. And I think there is a legitimate memory that I have buried because I get chill bumps just looking at basements. I'm on book tour right now, and I was at an Airbnb in southern Minnesota, Fairmont, Minnesota, and I stayed there with 2 writer friends. We were on tour together, and the Airbnb had a basement. It was, one of those creaky old farmhouse wood stairs, dirt floor, and then a shower down there in the middle of it. And on the counter upstairs in the kitchen, they had a single container of pork seasoning. It was the most threatening Airbnb, but I physically couldn't go down into that basement. I could take a few steps down, but I couldn't go down. And then I rammed a chair in front of the door so whatever comes to life at night in basements couldn't get us. I do think there's a childhood memory that I just can't access. But in the Quarry Girls in St. Cloud, those tunnels are real. Those tunnels in Pantown connecting the houses and connecting the houses to the factory are real. And I kind of wonder if that's the source of it because growing up in St. Cloud in the 70s, there were many horror stories about what would happen in the tunnels. And so I think that just got, when you're young, that stuff just gets sewed into your brain. Yeah, they were spooky. I think, yeah, they freaked me out. And I did not know the Quarry Girls tunnels were real. I couldn't get anybody to verify it when the book was published, but after the book came out, actually about a few months ago, I was in St. Cloud and a woman came up to me and said she has a friend who lives in Pantown and they busted out the wall and they got in the tunnels and they're still there. And she invited me to join her, which seemed like a trap. Anybody else have a question? Yeah.
I'll ask a question. So one of my so far, one of my favorite lines that I really resonate with is right in the beginning where Sunny says to you, "You need to get back to the dirt, Mira."
Yeah.
That means that hits home for me. And I know gardening in general and nature and stuff seem to be, prevalent in this series. Can you talk a little bit more about what that means to you, maybe?
Yeah. Thank you for that. I come from a family of gardeners, not really farmers, but just huge gardeners who, you grow your vegetables, you eat your vegetables and you can your vegetables, and that's what you eat in the winter. And I hated it as a child. I absolutely hated it. The worst was planting onions because you have to plant each one bit by bit by bit, and these rows went on forever. And I would just dig holes and throw the onions in them. And then you'd get busted because 3 months later, there'd be a million onions growing up in this one spot. And so if you had told me back then that I would grow up to love gardening, but there's something about it's meditative. So Trudy, you were just gardening today. I bet you know this. There's something meditative about the smell of the dirt, about knowing that you're going to feed yourself, about pulling the weeds, that sound when you pull the weeds, that perfect plucking noise. It just is the most soothing thing. And I don't know if it's because I grew up with it or if it's just the way that the earth is, but there's just something profound about it. Other questions about Battle Lake? And Sarah, what is your business? I wanted to ask you, what is your Battle Lake business?
So I actually own a personalized t-shirt shop.
Oh, fantastic.
Battle Lake. So I'm obviously wearing one right now, but I personalized to Battle Lake itself, to all the sports fun lake ones. So yeah, so that's what I do. And I do photography on the side, is another job I do.
Very nice.
Little bug is that. So I do a lot of photography. So another reason I'm interested, because I love that the fact this is based in Battle Lake. And just the story behind it. Like I've talked to Chris and I said, I would be willing to do like a photo shoot. How fun would it be to like kind of do a photo shoot through Battle Lake and have that character pop out and give people online like a little sneak of the books each month, but with that character at some of these places like Chief Wanunga or down by the lake or the hotel or any of the businesses that are mentioned or somewhat mentioned. Like I said, I haven't read them yet. I'm excited to. But I love the fact that it's based in our little town, and that's what Battle Lake needs. So I'm glad that it's based around Battle Lake, or kind of the story plot series is bringing something to our small town that I think our small town kind of needs, but at the same time, like we have these older folks that don't like to see change in different things in town. So we need to change their minds on something like this that could be great for people to learn about our small town. And it's all around great. I love that this is part of it. So
yeah, thank you. Yeah, and I do know not everybody in Battle Lake is a big fan of this series, but I remain a big fan of Battle Lake, so they're stuck with me.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's the thing. Like it's not everybody's jam or taste, and that's fine, but it's a great thing to be part of. So I'm glad you bring it to Battle Lake and shine a little light on our small town.
Well, and when I travel and when I sign those books all over the country, Battle Lake is like the 7 degrees of separation town. Everybody knows somebody from Battle Lake. It's the most bizarre thing.
I know my friend Amanda, who owns the next shop next to us, she's like, how do you know everybody? And I'm like, I've moved around. I've lived in St. Cloud, so I know the quarries. I actually went swimming there. Like the separation of, like you said, the 6 degrees of separation and knowing everything. It's, and learn about people and locations like, oh, I grew up there. I went to school there. And so, yeah, so it's fun to tie it all together.
Yeah.
So that's part of what I'm going to try and attempt to accomplish with this book club, is be kind of that bridge between the books and real life, and kind of showcase both.
Yeah.
And so I don't actually, so as I was coming into town to open the bookstore this last weekend, I mean, it just gave me goosebumps again, because I'm entering town right when, whoops, oh, you can't see this because I have my screen. I'm holding up a copy of Mayday. As the book unfolds, the town is coming back to life, because, the weather is getting nice, and the people, the tourists are coming in, and they're opening up their cabins, and the boats are getting unwrapped, and the nursery I posted on the chat group. Anyway, it was just really fun and exciting to be like, yes, this is fiction, but there are truths. There are many truths in here, and to be able to bring those truths to life in a different way is really fun. So yeah, so what Mira was experiencing, essentially in this book, I was literally experiencing as I drove into town. So
I love what your vision for this book club of bringing Battle Lake to people. It becomes like this 3-dimensional reading experience, which I think is just so imaginative.
yeah, thank you. And I don't know. I hadn't read the books for when they first came out. I didn't know of them. I discovered them kind of somewhere when I was younger, I think. And when I read one of the books, Knee High by the 4th of July was the first one I read, because it had in that publishing or whatever, it had a picture of Chief Wananga, and I went, what? That's Chief Wananga. And I read it, but I was a lot younger, and I read it as a mystery, which is what it is. When I reread Mayday, when I read Mayday, I really appreciated there's a whole nother level to the books. And, this whole 30-something, well, she's late 20s, early 30-something-year-old person who's, from a small town, kind of goes back to her roots, somewhat reluctantly, but also like she's kind of drawn, and just trying to figure out her life, and but through humor, and not taking herself too seriously, and realizing, maybe holding this idea of small town life in an open hand of, there's the good and there's the bad, but that's all together, that's what makes it beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
I had I don't know if it's really a question, but I grew up in St. Cloud, so I really responded to the thrillers that you started writing after the other book series and standalones that you have. And I'm admitting this to the public right now. I read all the Murder by the Month mysteries, and I didn't know that Battle Lake was a real place until Jen said, let's go visit Battle Lake. This was, this past fall, we went up there for a weekend. So I'm kind of dumb, but it was gorgeous. I loved it. We had the best time. We were on Crane Lake, wasn't it? Yeah, it was just the stunning B&B. We had no business being there, but it was so fantastic. And we did she took me on a little tour of, the Murder by Mystery spots. We saw Chief Ananga, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so dumb.
I've seen the pictures. Awesome.
Yeah, that's right. But I just love, I love the Murder by, God, I can't even say this.
Murder by
Month. I love the Murder by Month books. And they're hilarious. I laugh out loud and I weep as well. And the other books that are, the thrillers I just love them in a different way. They're so creepy, so
Yeah.
creepy. And it just, it speaks to me as someone who grew up in that era. Like I could smell things that I hadn't smelled in years.
Like the Aquanet.
Aquanet, but like the old cars that had the roll down windows, and they
Yeah.
just always smelled old.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe it's because I was poor, but
Same. Yeah.
Anyway, thank you for both of these juggernauts.
Oh,
Thank
thank you,
you.
Sandy. Thank you, Sandy Waters, for giving me Sunshine Waters as a character name too.
Duh.
Hey,
Okay.
you know, and I know many of you have visited Battle Lake, but if you haven't, it's for me what it is in a nutshell, that 1 week every summer where you'd go to a cabin on a lake and everything is kind of magical and trapped in time, and everything seems possible and everybody seems to know each other. That for me is Battle Lake, which is why I'm so happy, Kristen, that you invited me during Chief Wananga days. I'm bringing both my kids. We're going to grill and fish and just walk around and just be in Battle Lake for 5 days.
Very cool.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Well, Jess, would you be willing to tell us a little bit about the focus of your book tour this summer? And I know there's the re-release, right, of Mercy's Chase and Salem Cipher, and
Yeah.
you have honestly can't keep track. You have a lot going on.
I can't keep track. I'm starting to just look down and say, did I remember to put pants on? It's one of those, did I pants myself today? Sort of book tours. I've been in 30 libraries in 20 days and it's wonderful. I'm having a very good time. But because Salem Cipher and Mercy's Chase were re-released last month, and those two are like a Da Vinci Code-esque sort of thriller, but it's based around women's forgotten history rather than religious forgotten history. So those were re-released last month, and now a Murder by Month book every month is coming out. Just means I have a lot of tour events. So I'm done with most of it on June 11th. They're all up on my website, but the one I'm most looking forward to is it July 25th? When are you having the mystery dinner? Murder mystery.
It is the 26th, Friday the 26th.
Okay, I'm very much looking forward to that. And just being in Battle Lake during Monongah Days, you should all do it. If you have not planned it, come to Battle Lake.
And the murder mystery, I don't know if I shared this with you, Jess, or not, but the murder mystery event that we're going to do, which by the way, Jess and a couple other great authors are going to be a part of, is going to be kind of a loosely themed Mira James Comes Back to Battle Lake for Wananga Days.
Fun
mystery. So it'll be like a new mystery, a new Mira James mini mystery that you can participate in.
Oh my God, I can't wait. You are so clever. You and Jen are so smart at this. Yeah. So we have 5 minutes left and the weather is so beautiful that I want to be respectful of everybody's time. So are there any questions about Battle Lake or the book club or books, or Kristen, anything you wanted to say?
I had a question. Did you ever work at Stubbs?
I did, not officially, but I worked at Mabel Murphy's in Fergus and
Yep.
Fergus Falls, and I worked with Eric and Jerome. So they used to own Stubbs. They sold it last year, but so I became good friends with Eric and Jerome, and so I would fill in waitress for them. And Eric did not know this, but the first time he met me, it was at Mabel Murphy's, and I recalled how 5 years earlier he had kicked me out of Stubbs because I went there with a friend when I was 18 years old. They used to have slides in the back room then. I don't know how they got the insurance for that, but they used to have backroom slides and teen dances. And we all were just so busted up drunk at these teen dances that Eric kicked me out of Stubbs. And so when I saw him 5 years later, and I'm like, oh my God, you're the man who kicked me out. And now I'm your cocktail waitress. So I did work there as a fill-in, I don't think I was ever on the clock officially.
I like digging into the lore of your Battle Lake time and see how to
The lore.
They still have one of the slides, I think, in there.
What?
back
How
on the
is
stage,
A
yeah.
few years ago, my cousin got married there. Because my brothers have told me stories. We grew up in Fergus, and they
okay?
would bike to Battle Lake in the 80s, 90s to go to these teen dances in the like early 90s.
Ask him if he remembers the beaver trap. The beaver
Oh,
trap
yeah.
used to be on the way to Otter Tail, and it literally it was like the poor man's Hooters, but you would have to bring in your own liquor because they only sold mixed. Yeah.
Yep. Wasn't that the pier shortly after the beaver trap?
The
if
pier
I'm-
is past the beaver trap. I think
Okay,
the beaver
okay.
trap is still sort of moldering on the side of the road.
That's okay. Now I know which one you're talking about.
Well, thank you so much, everybody, for being here and for being a part of the group today. Thank you, Jess, for taking time
Pleasure.
out of your busy schedule to visit with us.